Hi everyone, this is devlog number 2, and I want to start off by saying I've made a lot of changes, and that's a good thing. To start off with, we've got a game controller scene whose responsibility is to switch scenes in and out of the game, and this is, well, this is already appealing to or facilitating a more modular code structure, which really helps for scalability, which is the title of this video. And I first came across errors with scalability soon after I uploaded the first devlog. And you can see here that everything's in a main node. That's the track, the camera, the player. Well, I mean, the player was actually its own scene there, and the UI as that green control node. And the problem with this, everything being in the same scene tree at any given time, is that like, depending on how you handle it, everything could be loaded in at the same time, which is not good for performance. And so what I've essentially done is I made this game controller script that essentially changes the nodes in one of three, let's say, parent nodes, I guess. So every time I want to change the 3D scene, the game controller um, receives a request from somewhere to change the scene. Usually it's the UI if the player selects like, okay, take me to this scene. Then the game controller receives this on scene change requested, and then depending on what the user wants to turn to, or where the user wants to go, it'll change the 3D scene and the graphical user interface to the relevant scenes for what the player wants. And right now we only have tavern and tracks, but the fact that I've implemented this now means that it's going to save me a lot of time when I do want to add things like cutscenes and, you know, environments outside of the track, because this is going to be a narrative driven game. So, yeah. And the way that this is possible is with something in Godot called autoloads or globals, autoloads, globals. I think it's the same thing. I don't know. Anyway, these are scripts that you can call upon from any node in your project, which is helpful. But that power also can cause problems if you've got nodes in some random scene, like directly calling global functions. And if it's super hard to keep track of. And so what is generally best practice is that you send signals to something called a signal bus, and then the signal bus, uh, and then so everything connects to the signal bus or emits signals using signal bus signals. And basically these things talk to each other through something like a telephone exchange. And that allows really nice modularity, because if things are just listening to signals rather than each other, then if one thing changes, it's not going to ruin everyone's day. Um, yeah. So we've got the signal bus that's sending signals to everyone, like you can see in this track 1 script. We've got, okay, when I'm ready, I'm going to tell the signal bus that I'm ready. And at the same time, I'm going to connect to signals in the signal bus for all checkpoints passed and whenever the player collides. And the player collides is handled by the player model, obviously. And when all the checkpoints passed, that's handled by the checkpoint manager, which is in the same tree. Let's see. Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit last devlog, but if all the checkpoints are passed, or this is something I implemented since last week, it's going to emit that signal. So the players passed all the checkpoints. I'm going to tell the signal bus that's going to tell the actual track manager that the players passed all the checkpoints and you can let them finish the level. And this ends up being maybe a little bit more boilerplate, but it really helps with scalability because now every single track, all they have to do when it's finished is like, or already, is send it to the signal bus and the signal bus can handle that. Anyway, what else have we got in this script? That's why I'm like looking over here, not at you. I've got like a little script. Oh yeah, the checkpoints. So last week, every checkpoint had its own script, which is really stupid. Well, I don't know if it felt stupid. I don't know if it is stupid, but it felt stupid at the time because if I have a script for each checkpoint and there's, say, an average of 20 checkpoints per track, and I have like 20 tracks, I'll just have 400 scripts that contain like one string of data, which seems silly. And so the way I fix that is every checkpoint has its own, well, no, every checkpoint uses the same script. And this script has a checkpoint ID that is set by the track manager, or sorry, not the track manager, the checkpoint manager. And then it's going to load call out data, and not only call out data, but it could eventually load some other data. You can see this track data, that's actually another auto load variable. Variable? No. That's another auto load script. We can look at it. Yeah, so this is just a big dictionary of data, basically. And you can see that it has all the callouts for track one. And if it looks too big, I can just minimize it. It's fine. And work on other tracks. But this is great because everything is managed here now. I don't have to click on each script, like each individual checkpoint script to change the images or anything. It's just all handled in one, what's called a JSON file. I think. I'm pretty sure it's a JSON file. And, now I talked about last week the fact that it's kind of silly that the boat is traveling at like 600 kilometers an hour. So I can go ahead and oh my God. I can go and change, I can divide everything by 10. And that's way quicker than changing every checkpoint string individually. And when I start adding assets to show maybe like the shape of the corner, like in Dirt Rally or something, like all I do is change the image. I don't change the file name or anything, and it's instantly pulled from track data into the checkpoint, which is awesome. And I find that working on this modularity and scalability in the early stages while I'm super motivated has been a good call because I haven't started making assets, and that's possibly what I'm most experienced at, like art and stuff. And so the fact that I'm using this early motivation to work on stuff that I'm unfamiliar with is a good buffer for when I get burned out and I can start doing stuff that I'm actually, I wouldn't say qualified, but experienced in. Um, but anyway, like, despite this looking like a bunch of self-imposed bureaucracy, like, everyone's got to talk to the telephone exchange, and the telephone exchange talks to the boss, and then the boss decides whether or not you can do this. It's it's still interesting and fresh and new, so to lay down this foundation, I'm hoping is a good call. What else would I want to talk about? Oh yeah, I guess I should play the game, right? My God, just to show you what's new. Okay, so yeah, we started up, and this is all the stuff loaded, essentially. So I've got all the auto load functions, a dialog manager, which is a plugin that I'm going to be using, and this is the game controller scene. And we can see what we have loaded are the splash screen and the pause menu, which is hidden because I'm not paused, right? And these just load in when you start the game. Could make it a bit more dynamic, but we can do that later. And it makes sense when you start the game that you always get the splash screen anyway. So you can click start, and this doesn't look like the game, right? But this is kind of the prototype for what I want the story mode to look like, and that's kind of like an isometric uh, RPG where your characters are 3D models in a 3D world, but I want to use 2D sprites to represent them, kind of like Donkey Kong Country or the Trails in the Sky games. Um, and I'm choosing to do that mostly because I don't have much experience in 3D modeling or rigging or 3D animation, so I feel like that really um, plays to my skills. Anyway, so we've got like a little cylinder representing the character with a capsule representing their nose, just so I can know which way they're facing. And then here is a NPC, and I can talk to the NPC, and he says, select a track. So we'll just jump on track one, and we'll see, yeah, I'm facing the wrong way, but it doesn't really matter. So we see now that the callouts are the right um, order of magnitude. And there you go. You can see that I also added like collision detection, and collision detection is not perfect by any means at the moment, but I'm waiting to uh, solidify or finalize how I do level design before I really get collision correct, because these curves kind of mess with the normals and the dot products between the relevant vectors, but I'll try and get a nice big collision here. Yeah. So I had quite a big collision there, 21, and you can see a lot of my cargo is gone now. It was at 100% when I started the race, now it's at 47. But we're just gonna go ahead and finish this race. Um, I've gotten a little bit better at cornering, just because the number of times oh, never mind. Just the number of times I've done this track. Um, you know, it's kind of helped with the whole racing. And you can see the environment's a bit pixelated. And that's just a stylistic choice. Um, I might change that later, but I like the pixels. It makes everything look a bit more homebrewed. Oh my gosh, I wasn't paying attention. But yeah, you can see the cargo went down again. So we're gonna set a very non-competitive time, and we have a new what's basically a result screen. We have the time. We can go back to the tavern, which is that isometric story scene, or we can look at upgrades, and this is completely non-functional, but you get the gist. And we can look in the remote scene, you can see that the splash screen is gone because we're not using it. And if we're not using it, why do we need it loaded? So we have the pause menu, which is still hidden. I could actually bring it up now if I wanted. See, we got pause screen. I can't actually click on anything. That's just to do with probably the Z index, and I haven't configured that correctly. But if we go to the tavern, I can click on this stuff. And restart's functional, save and load are both functional, and scalable. And to show that save is functional, let's talk to this dude. Yeah, he's saying your best time is significantly faster than the time we just set. Um, and I can ask him, what's my track 2 time? You haven't set a time yet. And so I'm going to quickly go into my files that I don't want you to look at, because I don't know how incriminating that may or may not be. Just kidding. Okay. Okay. So this is the app data of the game. You can see this save file here. I can open it up. It opens it up in VS Code. But here you go. That's the time in seconds, and then I have something that converts it into minutes, seconds, milliseconds. But what I can do is I can, delete this save file altogether. Okay, and then I can restart the game. Now I talk to this bloke. What's my track one time? I haven't set one yet. And I mean, we can go ahead and just save now, and then go back into this file. Let's set the best time to like 1 second. Okay. Hopefully this works. I haven't checked this. What's my best time? See, 1 second, which is crazy fast. And when you finish the track, it logs your time and saves it and all that good stuff. And that's all modular, scalable. So once I start adding things like upgrades or story states, that's going to update as well, and that all goes into the save data for different nodes to pull upon. So if you like upgraded your boat to have a rocket boost, my headset just turned off. Yeah, if you bought like a rocket boost upgrade or a braking upgrade, then at the start of like a scene, you could pull that from the save data. And that would change the functionality of whatever you're doing. One more thing before I move on to what I'm going to work on next. This is a bit of a longer video, but we'll also talk about that at the end. What I've been working on as well is the flow of the river. So my first approach to simulating the flow of a river was to use, I guess you could call it differential geometry, because the track is defined by a curve embedded in 3D space, and so that curve would have its own tangent vector, which will point in basically the direction of the river defined by the curve. But the problem with this is that the tangent vector does wacky stuff at corners in the river, and this is really messing with the boat's velocity, and I'm not super familiar with how Godot samples points from a curve, and it just wasn't working. So I was excited to use maths, in that way, but it didn't work. And you could use more complicated maths to simulate fluid dynamics, but I don't have time for that. And if I managed to do that, that would be like a project in its own right. Anyway, so this is a test track. I've started implementing zones, and what a zone is, it's just a block, and in the block there is a ray cast, and the ray cast doesn't do anything. It's just an arrow, and I couldn't figure out anything else that looked uh nice, so I'm using a ray cast, even though that's probably bad practice. You go on the test track and you see a lot of these river zones are stitched together, and they all are pointing in the direction of the river's flow. And that means when there's no user input, the boat will still move. And I'm pretty sure it'll move really fast because I haven't tweaked it yet. It's like a particle accelerator, right? And I'm not touching anything. So, I mean, I'm hoping this will make it feel a bit more like a river, and whether or not that makes the game more fun, we'll see. But in this way, what's really nice about this is that I can alter different sections of the river to be stronger. So, if you're going through a rapid section, then the zone strength could increase, and that would have a more significant, more substantial impact on the boat's velocity at that point in the river. And, because it's so simple, this is really easy to tweak. And just have a little look, you know, for every node in the zones, the zone manager kind of says, okay, at that zone, add the flow of the zone to the boat speed multiplied by the river speed itself, which could make tracks more difficult. And look at the river zone, it's all the same script like the checkpoints, another bit of modularity there. And yeah, this one defines its own flow as uh, the, what is this? I probably need to normalize this, but it's basically the direction that the arrow points after being rotated by me. And then at times, oh no, I did normalize it. Uh, and times that by zone strength. So yeah, you can tweak each zone's strength individually, which is pretty big brain of me, I want to say. But I haven't implemented that in tracks yet. And track design, I haven't really decided how I'm gonna do that yet because I don't really want everything to have like smooth curves like this. Like I don't think that'll fit the direction. I kind of want the tracks to be low poly, or the river to be low poly. And that will simplify how collisions work as well, because you're not running into curved surfaces that have weird, like normal vectors. You're just running into a flat wall, and you expect if you're running into a flat wall, that's going to be bad, unless you're like glancing it. Anyway, that'll be handled later when I start doing level design. So the question now is, what am I gonna do next? And now that I have like a nice skeleton, I can actually start working on the stuff that's interesting to me. So character design is probably next. So, when I talk to this dude, I want him to have like a portrait, and the portrait can be used to express emotion, and I'm much better at expressing emotions in like a 2D drawing than I would be in 3D modeling. And that's the direction um, like Trails in the Sky takes. Although, a character might fall to the ground when they're in despair or something. But that's much simpler than, having them, Fortnite emote when they're happy. Um, yeah, so I want to, especially for Marco, I think I'm going to make Marco the main character of the game. And he's going to be sort of like a grizzled merchant, and basically another character will be Luca, who's kind of like a an avatar or a vessel of a deity. It's both fine. And Marco and Luca kind of use Luca's power to get a competitive edge in um like medieval economics, like in the advent of like maritime trade or using bodies of water for trade, like you know people who could feasibly sail long distances along rivers, they stand to gain a lot. So if you were to have a competitive advantage in the form of a god, then you could stand to gain a lot. And so Luca and Marco kind of brought together by these circumstances. Um, yeah, so once I do the 2D portraits, just like prototypes for now, I wanna start trying 3D modeling, and they're gonna be I decided they're gonna be very low poly. That I'm gonna rig in Blender and make like very um you know low frame animations. Just because like I think that's quite a stylistic choice. It's not bad. Like it doesn't look bad. Like we love playing Chrono Trigger and games like this, even though they have low frame rates for character animation. Um, and yeah, it's kind of timeless, and that kind of helps me because I'm just one guy. I'm capable of it, but I'm just one guy. Um, I've said a lot. Sorry about that. And this is a longer video, but on that, on longer videos and kind of the nature of these videos, it's very monotonous. It's probably quite boring, but if you're getting into game development, you quickly understand that there's a form of content called devlogs, and the formula seems to be, high energy, unrealistic goals, um, very much a characterization of what a game developer is, or a caricature, I should say. Um, and that was popularized by the guy who made Muck more than anything, right? He's kind of very high energy, and that is really appealing in terms of content creation. And he definitely garnered success from that, but I'm not that kind of person. And I'm hoping that this will find its own niche where people just want to talk to. People just want to listen to a guy talk about his game, and he's not particularly interesting. Um, because I could never be like, hey guys, let's look at my game. Today I added all this stuff in a week, and it's completely broken spaghetti code. But no, here we get, hey guys, devlog number 2. I made my game more scalable by adding a signal bus auto load. So, um, devlog 3, we will see some 2D sprites, not 2D sprites, some 2D character art that will work as like, I don't know if you've ever played Mabinogi, but they do it really well, where the dialogue pops up and the character in a nice like drawing comes up on the left side of the screen. And depending on what happens, they could like express like different emotions. Uh, so yeah, we'll see that next week. Oh, sorry, what did I just do? And maybe a 3D model or two. I'm gonna start watching a tutorial on how to model a 3D rig after this. So I got that cut out for me. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you watched this far, uh, thanks and good job. That was probably a slog to get through.